Welcome to the Agile Wire, where professional Scrum trainers Jeff Boobles and Jeff Molesky discuss Agile topics. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Boobles and Jeff Molesky.
And we are recording. All right, Mr. Boobles, kick us off, man.
All right, so this week we got Ahmed Sidky on the podcast with us. So, Ahmed, you are the head of business agility at Riot Games, and many of our listeners may have not heard of Riot Games, so they've probably heard of the game that you produce, or the most popular game out there, League of Legends. And it's a pretty agile game, the way it's been developed, the way it's been described to me. I guess before we get too far into it, can you just give our listeners a little background about yourself?
Sure. So, started as a developer, went through the ranks, got into project management really early on, and led teams, did all that, but got really into product management also. Love the idea of what can we build and all that kind of stuff. After a number of years doing that, I decided to do my PhD, master's and PhD. And that took me into the Agile space. Really, I stumbled upon Agile. I did my master's in requirements engineering, which is very, very traditional computer science, software engineering kind of stuff. And then I remember going to my advisor and telling him, I can't continue this. Like, it's just so far from reality. And it's so theoretical and academic. And he tells me, so, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to work, find, discover a process, create a process that works the way people actually work. And I remember him looking at me, smiling, and says, good luck. And so that's where I stumbled upon Agile. This was back in 2001, 2002. And so in doing that research, I stumbled upon Agile, and it just totally resonated with me. So I did my PhD in Agile adoption, Agile transformation, which was an uphill battle to convince a very traditional, school to do anything like that. But then from there, started, working in Agile environments, then consulting. And then Riot was one of my clients, and we fell in love. It was a great opportunity. I started with Riot as their head of dev management, then chief of staff to the CEO, and then throughout the journey, I'm very passionate about Agile and education, and so co-founded IC Agile, the International Consortium for Agile, and the Business Agility Institute, because I do think there needs to be more in that space. So anyway, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, so there's a lot there that we could dive into. The first one, actually, I want to start with is, so your master's degree in requirements, and so you must be really good at like creating recipes, right? So like what to build and how to do it, and how does that actually really work at Riot Games? Because a lot of clients out there, they're like, well, you just fill up this thing and we just deliver it quickly, and that's Agile to them, right?
Yeah. So the biggest gap for me was this idea, and as Agilists, I think we know this. You don't know what you don't know till you see it, right? And so a lot of the requirements management space is about, articulation and extraction and finding the requirements and articulating them this way and, making completeness of the requirements. I'm like, really? Like, I don't know what I want. And I can see people imagining in their head what could be possible, and what adds insult to injury there is the way requirements are gathered, which is, you got some time right now to give me everything you want, and after that I'll charge you double. It will be painful. You have to ask for more funding, whatever it is, whatever penalties we put on people changing their mind later. So you get this kitchen sink mentality. Is like, oh, I want this and I want this and I want this. And so, but it's not actually, again, so combine that with the product development background I have, dude, most of those things are never used, right? And people don't know what they want till they actually experience it. And that's, for me, the co-creation concept in Agile. And I think we talk a lot about iterations and learning, but there really is this mindset of co-creating with the customer, right? The way we co-create is through iterations and feedback and all that kind of stuff.
So how does that work at Riot Games? Like, how do the teams that are building products, whether it's, I don't know, could be a team that's developing the
Sure.
music for League of Legends. It could be a team that's doing the graphics or something, background. How do they actually figure out what to do and how to work on it if they don't have
So
requirements?
there's multiple dimensions of this, right? One is the people you hire, right? So we are very intentional that we want to hire our audience,
Mm,
right? So that, we're building, I don't want to say for ourselves, we're still building for the audience, but the way we hire, the diversity we hire, who we talk to, how we engage with, groups. So that's something very, very important for us. So we've always said we have the biggest set of beta testers right here in the company. They're right here, right? When we launch a new game, one of our metrics is productivity going down in the company because we're all playing the new game? Because if we're all excited about the new game, then yes, there's something here that's sticky, right? So you, and again, this is not the only way, but who we hire is really, really important, right?
mhm.
And making sure that, if you're in music, you're passionate about music, you're passionate about players, you're passionate about, and you understand the needs and motivations, and again, we have a global audience, so that adds complexity to it. But those are all different things. And then again, typical things like, you bring in customers frequent, and get their feedback and integrate, and how you do all that is simple but not simple, but at the same time it's necessary, right, to build something that is, and the key word here is resonant, right? How, and with game development, or you know lifestyle development, music, entertainment, these kind of things, resonance is really, really hard, right? If you're an enterprise software, if you're in a bank, or any of my sort of previous spaces that I was in, it's simpler, actually. I need a thing to do a thing. Go write the requirements to do the thing, and then you can test it and make sure it does the thing. How do you test resonance? How do you test fun?
Mhm.
What's fun for you is not what's fun for someone else. What's fun for someone in China might not be fun for someone in Germany, right? What is fun? How do you develop that, right? Those are all, I think, hard questions, but and that's why Agile for us is not, oh, we want to be Agile because it's the latest thing or this or that. It's a necessity. How else are you going to win with customers, with players, right? Without co-creating with them, iterating, learning, pivoting. We've made mistakes along the way, 100%. But that's really the essence of it. Sorry, you wind me up there. I'll keep going. You got to stop me, Jeff.
No, this is really good. I love it when there's so much passion coming from people that we're talking with. So, from what I understand, agility has always, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but agility has always been in the DNA of Riot Games,
Yes.
since the very beginning. Like, I feel like that's in and of itself a competitive advantage versus so many organizations that are having to make that transition towards customer centricity or agility or easily responding to change, however, or that agile mindset, right? Whatever way we want to phrase it, right? So, in your experience, having gone big companies going through that transition versus working with a company where it was embedded in their DNA from the very beginning, like, it's still a learning process, it's still a journey, but like, I'm curious, how has it been different? Like, what are the contrasts that you see between those two types of environments?
All right. So again, you wound me up there. So here we go. Riot never set out to be Agile, ever, till today. We've always set out to be customer centric or player centric, right? That was always, still is, will be the motivation. And it's because of that that we need to be Agile, right? So Agile for us is not a nice to have. It is a necessity to be customer centric. Why? Because we know that the customer is in a constant state of motion, right? The customer doesn't even know what they want, right? We're creating new experiences. Here's the thing about customer centricity. I think a lot of people think, and not all, but a lot of people think of customer centricity as being sort of like customer service. What do you want? Let me give it to you. What do you want? Let me give it to you. That's not how we view customer centricity. Customer centricity or player centric is knowing the customer to such a degree that you can create a bold new world for them that will resonate with them. All right. So take Henry Ford, right? If he asked people what they wanted, they said, I want a faster horse. No, but he understood people, right? He loved the outdoors. He actually wanted people to go and enjoy the land around them, the USA, and go and travel, but there was no means. He was that kind of person. He was passionate about that. And so understanding the needs and motivations of people, he was able to build a new experience for them. So now going back to your question about Agile and born Agile, and because a lot of companies look at us and say, well, you guys were born Agile. Well, we were born customer centric, right? Not Agile. Now, Agile became a necessity. So the question I ask companies that I consult with is, are you really customer centric, or is that just one of the values we put because, we need to put those? When it comes down to it, do you truly put the customer in front of the org? Or are you org-centric? And in order to be org-centric, we got to satisfy the customer. It really is who's in service of who, right? And I have seen many, many companies that are actually very org-centric. It's about my profitability. It's about my market standing. It's about my competitive advantage. It's about me, right? It's not about I am fighting on behalf of a customer. When Mark and Brandon founded Riot, they were fighting on behalf of players. They were sick and tired of how game companies treated players, right? Transactionally. And they said, we're going to do something different, right? We're going to truly serve them. And that drove the agility in the company. When we were releasing League of Legends, it was daily iterations, right? Why? Because we wanted to make sure we were going to build something that resonates. Now, when you want that daily iteration, that just forces you to work in a different way than you would work normally, right? So I would say, because like I said, that's a hot button for me because it's customer centricity that really drives, and it's an identity, Jeff. It really is. My metaphor, it's like it's an athlete, right? I work. One of the people I work with a lot at Riot, my sort of counterpartner here, is a professional bodybuilder, right? He's at the gym 3-4 hours a day. I'm not a professional bodybuilder by any means. I'm glad the camera zoomed in on my face right now, but not the rest of me. But here's the thing. When I look at him and I'm like, dude, how do you do it? Right? And his answer is just like, it's who I am. Like those, it's not actually a choice in my head. It's just who I am and what I stand for. Right. So for example, I'm a practicing Muslim. I don't drink. He looks at me as like, I don't know how you don't drink. I'm like, for me, it doesn't even compute. It's not a thing for me. Right. And so companies that are customer centric, companies that aren't look at them as like, wait a minute, how do you make those decisions? It's like, it's just second nature for me. That's how I work. I put the customer first because that's how I work. And so what becomes some of the hardest decisions in a transformation to Agile are trivial for companies that are truly customer centric because the identity and what they're willing to do for that identity is different. That's the core transformation that I see in companies, not the systems, right? The systems follow the strategy, which follows the mission, which follows identity. Anyway, long
lot
answer
there, right? So I want to expand on the identity thing because I think that's a huge topic. So look, you have a lot of developers, right? People that code every single day, and if they identify themselves as I'm a developer, I write code, that's one thing. And kind of seems more like what a organizationally focused organization might say is like, you have a job, you do this thing, be efficient at it. But if you have a purpose, like what you were just describing, and you have something that you're so passionate about, like you just were, your passion is, it oozes out. You're going to say, I'm a problem solver. I solve problems for gamers. And that's my passion. And I create fun for people. And that's a whole different thing to get excited about every single day.
100%.
And I think that's it just comes out in the way that you talk about this. That's awesome.
And it's hard, by the way. It really is hard to find people that like that. And so that's why, again, when we were prepping for this, we were talking about Agile beyond just delivery. I think Agile in HR is really, really important. And I'm not talking about putting Kanban boards for HR teams. I'm talking true agility, understanding culture, hiring for mission alignment, building those. Because again, here's the thing. The most agile part of any organization is people. It doesn't matter what systems you put in place. Scrum, Safe, put whatever you want. It doesn't make a difference. Because if you have people that are not agile, that are not passionate, you will have passive compliance to whatever systems those are. Now, put the worst systems, the most non-agile systems in place, but have people that are passionate about serving customers. They will break those systems and they will get the work done, right? So it's, for me, and I know this is problematic and well, we have to have systems. Yes, okay, we can optimize. But when you boil it down, it's people. It really is. People with growth mindsets, learning mindsets, agile mindsets, whatever you want to call them, right? And they're passionate about serving a customer. And they understand who their customer is. And they understand the motivations. And they're willing to take that ownership and do whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeff. I just wanted to say, like, that growth mindset, that's what I heard even before you said that. Like, I just kept hearing that echoing in my head. Like, so if we're talking Agile HR, it's really about finding people that I don't have the skill yet. I can't do this yet, but I will get there. I'm going to practice on this. I'm going to work towards this thing. And if you have HR and that can help bring those people into your organization that want to grow, that have that passion and have that desire, I mean, the sky's the limit. You're gonna figure it out a way.
I think the role of HR is bringing them in and keeping them growth mindset. Here's the problem. That, right? Yeah. Organizations are complex, very, very complex. And I want to acknowledge that. I think sometimes we look from the outside and it's like, why don't you just do this? It's hard. It's really, really hard, right? And so there is a natural tendency in organizations to move even the best of growth mindset people to fixed mindset. It's safer. I've seen it. I've seen it with the best of intentions, right? Where we tell someone, you know what? Let's get it right this time. Oh, well, that just rose. The stakes just went really up right now. So if I don't get it right this time, like we say it motivationally, right? But you actually, that word just shifted something in that person's mindset. Well, what if I don't? What's going to happen? Well, let me play it a little safer this time, right? It's small things. And so HR is, culture is defined by the top, no doubt, but it's communicated and nurtured by HR, by middle management. And so the HR role in an agile organization is so fundamental. Yet I think we've boiled it down very transactionally, but they create a culture of learning. They can. The way performance is set, the language we use. So it's HR and internal comms. Put those two together. Those are a key to many transformations that a lot of people just haven't knocked on that door yet, or have knocked on it in a transactional manner versus in a true partnership manner. It's like, listen, in one way or another, you guys, I don't want to say own culture, but you drive it, right? Let's drive this learning culture. And what does that mean? It's hard. It's hard.
And with HR, we've actually talked about this a few times in the past, but HR is really that gatekeeper to your culture. And then your culture is essentially whatever you're saying yes or you're saying no to. What are the behaviors that we find acceptable as a culture, and what are the ones that we don't find acceptable, and be promoting or removing all of those to enhance our culture overall. And back to what you were saying earlier, what really even at Acorns, this is one of our pillars, is hiring missionaries, not mercenaries, right? Like we want the passion, right? We are a very mission centered organization. So with benevolence and courage, we look after the financial best interests of the up and coming, right? That phrase is literally on the beginning of every slide deck that we have internally, and it's not just skipped over; it's read, and people understand the values that go along with it. When I took the job, I told everybody I talked with, like, I don't need this job. I want this job because I believe in the mission.
Yes.
And everybody that we bring in, and I shouldn't talk too much about Acorns, but I think I talked with about 10 people through that interview process, and every one of them, you felt the mission coming through in the conversations. They were all there because they believed in what we're trying to do as an organization. And I think that just further kind of emphasizes what you're talking about here. Put that with a growth mindset. I don't care if you've got the skills today. I care that you have the right attitude and you're bought into the mission and you are aligned with us and we can all row in the right direction. And that's how we achieve these phenomenal outcomes as cultures, as organizations, as companies, whatever we want to throw out there.
Yep. I totally agree with you. And you said you said behaviors, and for me, that's a keyword. I want to talk about behaviors for a second, and sorry if I'm taking us in a different direction, but I really think when we talk about organizations that want to transform, and I talk about this on my website, because I think when we talk about transformation a lot, we tend to focus on the strategy, the structure, the processes, those kind of things. When you really boil it down to behaviors, just boil it down to behaviors. What are behaviors that we see today in the organization? And what behaviors do we want to see tomorrow, right? And that tomorrow behavior discussion needs a vision. You need to have a vision for how you want to work, what the world looks like for you. And I think a lot of transformations miss that today. They have a tactical, operational agenda for, I have KPIs I want to change, but to inspire hearts and minds, to really paint a picture of what the future will look like working here, that's important. But then you boil those down to behaviors and you get magic, because now we are all focused on changing these behaviors. It's not about Agile or not, or Scrum or these practices or stand-ups or sticky notes. It's not about any of that. It's about, I want to see this behavioral change. And I'll tell you a quick story here. I don't know how many years back, but it was one of my clients that I was helping consult, and it was a major Agile transformation. And they've been struggling with Agile for a couple of years. And I was consulting with them, and Agile was one of, I think, 5 or 6 different transformations that were happening in this big company. And it was just like another thing. That's it. And so there was this big meeting, directors and above, all the way to the C-level. And Agile had 45 minutes on the agenda, because we had other things to do and talk about, of course. And, the team working with me was like, what are we going to talk about? What progress report are we going to give, and all that? And till this moment, everyone was giving Agile a lot of lip service, but no real action. And so we designed this, back to behaviors here, we designed this exercise. So we had this big stage, and back when we could all meet in person, this was, we asked everyone to stand up, 200 plus people, and stand along the stage, imagining the stage as a spectrum. And we put one flip chart on the left that said, not committed to Agile, and one flip chart on the right that said committed to Agile. And we said, please go stand where your level of commitment is. Everyone, 200 people, are standing sort of to the right, where it says committed to Agile. And then we said, oh, sorry, we forgot to define the spectrum. So we bring out these flip charts that actually articulate behaviors, right? And so level 1 commitment are these behaviors. And the behavior says something like, if I remember correctly, send my people to training, right? That's level 1, right? All the way up to level 5 behavior, which is inclusive of 1, 2, 3, and 4. But it says, I personally, as a leader, will demonstrate limiting work in progress. And I can't remember what, active listening or something like that. And we said, oh, sorry, guys, can you just stand where your actual level of commitment is based on these defined behaviors? And that was the moment where everyone moved to the right, to the left. And I was standing beside, I think it was the CIO and CMO. And I said, that's your problem right there. Everyone is committed, but not to what behaviors. It's a generic, fluffy commitment. And so when you boil it down, Siri's talking to me. When you boil it down to behaviors, it's powerful because now I can say, do I observe these behaviors or not? Right? What can we do to change these behaviors? And now the strategy, structure, and process are all in service of how do we enable this new behavior in the organization? Sorry, that word just,
There's there's so much there. Maybe we could just back up for a second. What does it look like, sound like, feel like at Riot Games when you're talking about an agile environment, the behaviors that people see? Like, just paint us a picture once, if you could. Just, I don't know if everyone completely understands what it's like there.
That's a hard question. That is a very hard question, but let me try. So, if I'm painting a picture, you have a very open environment, literally very physically open. No one has an office, not even our CEO, right? We have maybe, meeting rooms that are more dedicated towards people because they're always in meetings, but actually everyone has a desk. Everyone has a desk on the floor, right? And teams, the reason we have that, we have walls that move, walls that are on wheels, because you want teams to shift and change and people to, structure and restructure easily, and teams to expand and whatnot based on workload and so forth. You have passion everywhere you walk. You have passion. You have visibility. Ton of information radiators all over the place, digital, physical, whatnot. You have a culture of challenging, of experimenting, of trying, of let's do this. So when you look at our journey as Riot, we have a game, and we didn't know it was going to do this good, right? But when you have people that are passionate, like we talked about earlier, they start to say like, "Hey, what if we do this?" And now you have leadership that doesn't say, "Well, this isn't on our plan or whatnot," or "I don't have budget for this." They're like, I'm as crazy as you are. Let's do it. Let's try it. Right. And so we've tried these different things that have grown our capabilities over the year. Who knew that we would go from, every game has music, but to publish a music album and have our own, virtual band and like all these things. Guess what? That wasn't the top coming up with these ideas. That was people on the front line saying, what if? Can I experiment with this, right? We just announced we're doing an animated series, right? And so guess what? That wasn't a strategic bet. That was a music producer, composer saying, I have an idea about this. Can we try it out? Right? So that culture of we want to do, and again, when we were, 200-300 people, that's one thing. We're 3,500 people across 22 offices. There is complexity to this, right? And there's, the more we grow, that's what I'm saying. Organizations are complex and they're hard, but you want to keep that core spirit alive, right? You have what we call Thunderdomes, like hackathons, right? And ideas come from that. Like you want to keep this bottom up, top down dynamic. Things need to be top down too. Don't like that's the other thing. I think we paint one picture and we say it's uniform across. No, it's not, right? There are things that are top down because there's no way you can lead an organization of that size without having some things top down. But it's the balance of top down and bottom up. right? It's the balance of ownership and accountability, right? You want people to feel that ownership and try new ideas. But yeah, look, listen, if this was your own startup, you would be held accountable by whoever's funding you, yourself or your VC or your angel investor. So there's this balance of, so if you ask me, it's a tension. It's a healthy tension across multiple dimensions. So anyway, I want to stop long answers, but
no, these are great. Please continue with them. But I'm kind of curious because you just brought in that funding piece at the end, and so I may have to edit this out afterwards, but I'll ask the question anyway. So Acorns is in the process of going public, and so there's been a lot of scrutiny around. Okay, well now that we're going to be held publicly accountable to things, we need to have more formality around our roadmaps, the things that we're looking to deliver, because these are what our investors are going to be looking in. And so there has been a lot of type of conversation around that. So when I hear what you're talking about, the top down, bottom up, not that I'm looking for the secret sauce inside of there, but like if there is a balance between, we have investor commitments that we need to make, and here was our projected roadmap for 2022 or whatever that happens to be, but we've got all these wild, crazy ass ideas that sound fantastic and we want to do them. Like what is that balance or that middle area that you're able to strike at Riot Games to be able to fulfill those commitments to investors, but also the flexibility to go off in a completely new direction and experiment?
So we're wholly owned by Tencent. So Tencent is a public company. We're not. We're a wholly owned subsidiary, but we have a board that we still have to answer to, right? I'll tell you this. I think it's the CEO's job to provide air cover for the organization to be agile and to be customer-centric and to take long-term bets. And as former chief of staff and as worked closely with the founders, this is something that they invested a lot in. They invested a lot to make sure that the board understands, listen, esports is a very long-term bet, and it will put us in the red for years. And if my board, if my investors don't understand that, so, I think to any company that's looking to go public, right, there's a real big question of, you gain things, you lose things, right? And what is that trade-off going to be for you? I don't know, right? But here's the interesting thing. The surrendering to certain constraints blindly versus the creative, like, you know what, I'm going to do this for my customers still. Not, I now have also stakeholders and investors I need to satisfy. But when it comes down to it, who's going to win, right? Is it short-term market forces, or is it long-term customer focus? And I've seen companies nowadays, and like take Tesla as an example. And again, I am not a financial guy by any means, right? But I've seen people like Elon Musk say, you know what? I don't care about the short term, right? I'm going to do what's right on the long term, and the market's going to go up and down. This is a very complex thing that I think is beyond my scope, my understanding, because the market definitely puts very short-term pressure on public companies, right? And the way executives are compensated around that, I can make a bet, get a big lump, do a quick win, retire early, and I'm in and I'm out, right? This is, like I said, beyond me, but I've seen it. I've been in certain conversations where I've seen, what this really entails. And I think it's a systemic problem that I don't have a quick answer to right now. But what I invite companies to do is, if a company is really agile and doing great, and they need to go public for whatever reason, that's totally fine. What kind of public company are they going to be, right? Easier said than done, get it. But it's going to, just like, by the way, when you take a very hard stance in a transformation and there's going to be a lot of people opposing you and a lot of people may leave and all that, it's the same thing. If you're going to be a customer-centric, long-term focused company that is public, certain institutional investors may not want to be part of this. And are you okay with that? That's the kind of things that I think companies may not really think about is, what do we lose? Because there are controls. There are things that I need to add, but I can do them in certain ways that adds flexibility, or I can do them in certain ways that reduces my flexibility. And that's a choice.
Yeah. Earlier, you were talking about customers and not doing everything your customer wants, right? Like I had this vision of the Homer Simpson episode where it was the everyman's car and he builds this car and it's got every little feature on it, but it's super, super expensive and nobody wants it, right?
Yeah.
And that happens in products all the time, especially digital products. But the same thing could be said right now for stockholders, right? Like, do I want every stockholder, or do I want only ones that care about long term? Do I want ones that do I care if I lose some people that are short term, want the short term gain? If maybe I don't know. I think that's part of you as a company to say and get your board on board and things like that, saying we're going to be a long term company. This is how we're going to operate. This is what got us here, and this is what's going to make us successful into the future. And
I'll tell you this, it's really hard because, some companies want to go public to reward their employees, right? And to give them some, long-term, wealth, real gain. And that's great. But what do you lose? Because that same thing that you want may be the reason why now the culture changes, because, well, now my wealth is measured by my stock price. Oh, wow. So if I do this short term, my stock price, my wealth, I leave. It's really complicated, guys. But it's real. I'm glad we're talking about this. This is not something most people talk about when they talk about Agile, but it all plays. If we're talking about a systems view of things, this definitely plays a role. Huge.
Yeah, those incentive structures that are in place, right? Like whether we want to acknowledge it or not, there's always going to be influence there.
Yeah.
So what kind of incentive structures do you put in place that promote learning, promote the growth mindset, promote the culture getting to a culture that you have at Riot Games is one thing. Maintaining it's probably just as much work, if not harder work, especially with the size that you're at now. So what kind of things do you do to keep that culture going?
All right. What do we do to keep the culture going? First, it's a conversation that we have every day. It's not something that we lose sight of, right? Out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So we talk about culture, we invest in culture. When we talk about incentives, it's hard because, again, as the company matures and grows and different things shift over time. But one of the things that I think we have kept at the heart of Riot is this idea of one team. We are one Riot, right? And that was easy at the beginning because we had one game, right? But even though we had one game, we had different products. We had esports. We had, different, countries. But we've always kept this idea of we win together, we lose together, right? Many companies have different incentive structures depending on the business unit you're in, depending on this or that. And so it starts to inadvertently create this kingdomship. Leaders start to build kingdoms, call them silos, call them whatever. But I want to win. Right. And especially if the pot of gold is limited, I win, you lose. Now, this becomes a very interesting dynamic that you build in an organization. This past year, we've launched, 4 more games. And so there is the gravitational pull to start to think of each one as a separate studio. It's very typical in game companies. And we're pushing, like our CEO is like, no, we are one. This game may go through ups and downs, but if we're really focused on the long term, this other game will carry it. So if I reward the people on this game if they go up and reward the people on this game if they go down, then everyone wants to optimize for the short term because we are human, right? And we all lose. So the idea of one P&L, one Riot, one incentive structure, for many big companies is crazy. For us, it's foundational. Right. And that just keeps the idea that, you know what, we are all focused on what's best for Riot. So we're optimizing for the whole, not for the part. Right. It's hard at a leadership level. If you're a president of a group of a division, that's really hard. Right. But those are the things where I see our CEO and our leadership team investing in. And by the way, it sends ripple effects across the company. when you start to see that one team mindset at the top, people start to, collaborate more, initiate collaboration is so hard and difficult. People avoid it, right? Let alone if collaborating has no material effect on me, my product, my incentives, my rewards. Why the hell go through it? Right?
It's
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. As you were just talking about that, I was trying to think about like because we were talking about incentive structures earlier, and it's like if you incentivize the whole, or let's take the other way, you incentivize the per product line, and now you've got Legends of Runeterra that's starting to suffer, or Valorant that's starting to suffer, any of the other individual ones, right? All of a sudden that you've created the stigma there. It's the sinking ship. Everybody wants to get away from that as quickly as possible, right? Because they're incentivized to go over to the winning side, and then you're what is it? Not a vicious cycle, right? You're just hastening the demise there. But having this incentive structure where it's one Riot, one platform, or one holistic organization, now all of a sudden it's like, hey, this area over here is starting to sink a little bit. What can I do to help that area, right? Like, and that's the virtuous cycle that we want. That's us looking out for each other, lifting us up, and tie right in with all these other great, agile buzzwords that we can throw out there. But I really like that because of the dysfunction that we can so consistently see and point to when it comes to fiefdoms, when it comes to silos, when it comes to local optimizations versus system-wide optimizations. Just a lot of that can be drawn from those incentives that we're putting in place, and either the positive or negative repercussions of those incentive structures.
Yep. I'll give you a trade-off there, though. So when you do have one Riot, now you have 3,000 plus people. It's hard for me to feel the impact that I make to Riot itself. What does Jeff Wells do to help on a daily basis to impact the bottom line? And if I have a smaller P&L, I have teams that I'm working on, I have a product line, I'm like, yep, we are focused on this goal. Did we hit that goal? Did we not? Like, I can feel satisfaction in that. I can feel something. Now, granted, you get your passion, you hiring people that really care about what they're doing. But I think having transparency into the effects, did this work or did this not work when we're running experiments, is very, very important. And so I think you have to know that for each of your games that you're putting out there.
100%. So even when you have virtual P&Ls, let's call it that, right? Mm-hmm. It's for visibility and navigation, not for decision-making and rewards, right? That's the difference. So as a head of a team, a head of a division, I was leading our dev management discipline, right? I need to know how much I'm, making, how much I'm, I need to know those things as a responsible leader running a part of the org. Mm-hmm. But that's very different than making company-wide decisions or decisions that will affect the company, trying to optimize for my P&L, right? So visibility, totally agree. But optimization, we optimize for the whole. And how do you do that practically? Just don't create incentives at the silo level. Create incentives if you all win together. And that becomes, if we hit collectively, Riot hits this mark, we do this. Great. How do we make Riot hit that mark? Back to your point, Jeff. Oh, what's the part that's, this game, if we can push this game up, we all go up. Great, let's do that. Versus let's all jump ship from there, go to the cash cow, because that's where I get my short-term bonus, mm-hmm. and I'll, go on that family vacation I want to go on, right? Again, you're dealing with humans, you're dealing with, things that affect day-to-day lives. And so once we get to incentive structure, it is so powerful, the culture that incentive structure can create, right? And that's, again, going back full circle, HR plays a huge role in that.
Yeah. And making sure people understand why and how that gets divided and all that good stuff. So I don't know. Do you have any, we've told this story a couple of times in the podcast about, like, there are certain companies out there, well, they'll say, we're going to give this team X number of dollars for, raises, for bonuses, whatever. And then let the team decide how they're going to, like, divide that up, because they know they're closer to the work. They'll figure out the best way to divide that up. Why should we do that from a leadership standpoint over here? Do you guys do anything like that, or how does that happen on the teams?
We don't do that. And again, I don't know if we would do that. I haven't thought of that. But yeah, I've heard of that in, management 3.0 practices and whatnot. I mean, the way we do it is, there's a leader that is, I think we look at leadership as, far away, but there's a leader close to that team, right? Like when I was leading a big team, I knew who's actually doing what, and so we just delegate to that level. So there is still leadership making decisions, right? We don't just give the pot to the team and have them allocated. Good, bad, maybe it works for some teams, maybe it doesn't. But I think, again, no solution is 100% good or right or bad, or there's I think if you have that kind of dynamic at scale, you will have different behaviors that start to emerge, whether good or bad for your organization, I don't know. But you'll have people creating little tribes and I scratch you back, you scratch my back kind of thing. I don't know, right? Because we're human and these things happen. But long story short, no, we're not doing that. But we are definitely making sure that leaders close to people get to decide on, it's not done at the top.
So when you say leaders, what does leaders look like at Riot Games? Like, tell me more about that.
Leaders is a very wide range. It's someone accountable for a group. Whether it's a team, an org, a group of teams, I call all of those leaders, right? Now, is everyone a leader? Everyone should demonstrate leadership, but I don't think everyone is a leader. Like, again, at some point you have to make that distinction, or else, if everyone is a leader, then what are leaders, right? There's a level of accountability that comes with leadership. I think I've talked about this before. The difference between ownership and so when you think about it, like there's collective responsibility and there's accountability, right? As citizens of the United States, we are collectively responsible for our country. But we have an elected leader that we hold accountable. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Ahmed, it's been great having you on the show. Is there anything you want to plug here before we wrap it up?
No plug, really. Just invite people to explore more than just the delivery of Agile. There's a lot that we can do. I've put a lot of my stuff on my website, ahmedsidky.com. Just PowerPoints, Google Slides, just use it. Like, there's a lot. Anyone that knows Agile and is passionate about Agile, we can make an impact in culture, in organizations, in our families. So I put a lot of my resources, a lot of my talks there just for people to use. So just invite people to check that out.
Thank you for listening to the Agile Wire. We are consistently inspecting and adapting ourselves. We would appreciate feedback at feedback@theagilewire.com or on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play Store. See you next time.